Welcome back to Outside Views. Today we'll examine the challenges facing the UK as it continues to grapple with the fallout from Brexit and its self-imposed isolation on the global stage. Under Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the UK is facing stagnating economic growth, growing public discontent, and even a spy scandal that has further exposed vulnerabilities in its institutions. The question is, how did Britain get here, and is there a way out of this crisis? To understand the current predicament, we must start with a historical context. In 2016, the Brexit referendum marked a turning point in British history. The Leave campaign promised a brighter future outside the European Union, with bold claims of restored sovereignty, reduced immigration, and newfound economic freedom. But these promises, as many warned at the time, were built on shaky foundations. The years since Brexit have revealed the realities of disentangling the UK from the EU. The economic benefits promised by Leave campaigners have largely failed to materialize. Instead, Brexit has introduced new trade barriers, reduced the UK's access to the single market, and made life harder for businesses and households alike. The Office for Budget Responsibility estimates that Brexit will result in a 4% long-term hit to GDP, a stark reminder of the economic costs of leaving the EU. Fast forward to 2024 and the UK is in a precarious position. The Labour Party, led by Keir Starmer, came to power in July after a historic election victory that ended 14 years of Conservative rule. Starmer promised a fresh start, focusing on economic renewal and restoring public trust in government. But less than 6 months into his tenure, his government is already under immense pressure. Let's start with the economy. The UK's economic challenges are stark. Inflation is on the rise, with the consumer price index expected to increase from 2.3% to as high as 2.8%. Core inflation, which measures long-term price trends, is also climbing, threatening to surpass 3.8%. And these figures are particularly troubling for a population already grappling with rising living costs and stagnant wages. The Labour government's decision to introduce VAT on private school fees has added fuel to the fire. While framed as a move towards social justice, it risks alienating the middle class and exacerbating inflation. The Bank of England faces a difficult choice. Raising interest rates to combat inflation would further slow the economy, but doing nothing risks letting inflation spiral out of control. At the same time, the UK's GDP data paints a grim picture. Economic growth has been stagnant since Labour took office, with October data showing a 0.1% contraction. This decline is part of a broader trend. The UK economy has shrunk in 4 of the 5 past months, and these figures are a sobering reminder that Brexit, combined with years of political instability, has left the UK ill-equipped to navigate global economic challenges. Public sentiment reflects this bleak reality. 2/3 of Britons expect the economic situation to worsen in the coming year, according to recent surveys. And this pessimism is the highest recorded since the end of 2022, highlighting the depth of public frustration. Even in Labour strongholds like the industrial north, support for Starmer's economic policies is waning. And now, let's turn to the political scandal that has further eroded public confidence. The revelation of a spy scandal involving Yang Tengbo, a Chinese businessman with close ties to Prince Andrew, has rocked Westminster. Yang is suspected of being part of an elite capture operation, a strategy that's used by the Chinese state to influence Western nations. He allegedly gained unprecedented access to British institutions, highlighting vulnerabilities in the UK's national security. This scandal underscores a broader issue, the erosion of British institutions in the post-Brexit era. The Labour government has promised to introduce a new registration system for foreign influence agents, but critics argue this is too little, too late. Former Conservative leaders have warned that Yang's case may be just the tip of the iceberg. raising questions about the UK's ability to protect itself from foreign interference. The combination of economic stagnation, political scandal, and public discontent paints a picture of a nation in crisis. But how did they get there? And the answer lies in part in the UK's self-imposed isolation. Brexit fundamentally reshaped the UK's relationship with the world, leaving the EU severed ties with its largest trading partner, introduced new barriers to trade, and diminished its influence on the global stage. And while the UK hoped to offset these losses by forging new trade agreements, the results have been, let's say, underwhelming. Deals with Australia and New Zealand, for example, offer limited economic benefits and have been criticized for favoring foreign producers over British farmers. At the same time, the UK has struggled to rebuild trust with the EU. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has made improving relations with Brussels a priority, but progress has been slow. The EU has made it clear that any reset will require concessions from the UK, including on issues like fishing rights, youth mobility, and adherence to EU laws in specific areas. And these demands are politically sensitive and risk alienating the UK's already divided electorate. The international context further complicates matters. The war in Ukraine, geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, and the return of Donald Trump to the White House have created a volatile global environment. In this context, the UK's isolation is increasingly seen as a liability. Strengthening ties with the EU is not just an economic necessity, it's a strategic imperative. However, the Labour government faces significant obstacles in achieving this what they call reset. Domestically, Starmer must contend with the right-wing Reform UK party and led by Nigel Farage, which continues to gain traction among disillusioned voters. At the same time, divisions within Labour over how to approach the EU risk undermining Starmer's efforts. Internationally, the UK must navigate the complexities of re-engaging with the EU while maintaining its sovereignty. And this balancing act requires skillful diplomacy and a willingness to make difficult compromises, qualities that have been in short supply in British politics in recent years. So in conclusion, Britain is paying the price for its self-imposed isolation. The decision to leave the EU has had far-reaching consequences, from economic stagnation to diminished global influence. And while the Labour government's efforts to reset UK-EU relations are a step in the right direction, they are not enough to address the structural challenges facing the country. For Britain to truly move forward, it must confront the realities of Brexit and embrace a more cooperative approach to its neighbours and the world. So thanks again for joining me on Outside Views. But what is your take on Britain's current predicament? Do you think the Labour government can turn things around, or is the UK destined to remain in crisis mode? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below the video, and as always, stay informed and stay curious. Until next time, and the next video is right here in the end screen.